All right, so now we're just going to kind of do the icing on the cake. I'm going to address this footer. And the idea behind this footer is that it's what I'm going to use to introduce you to the fact that we can create an external JavaScript page, just like we've created external style sheets that all of our pages could utilize. And potentially a footer is something that's going to be consistent on all pages, so I don't want to necessarily write out a footer every time I create a new index page or a new thank you page or whatever it is. So we're going to start creating the page, and then we'll see how to put it to the footer, and then we'll put it to an external page. So let's see. Again, I would always keep this open so that way you can see if you've made some errors. For real estate, I'm going to close mine out, but that's what I suggest you do, is keep yours open. All right, so with the footer, I don't want the footer to be just contained within this minimum space like we did with container. So I'm going to make sure that I'm going to add my footer outside of this div class container so that it's not contained to 80% and halfway in between. So I'm going to create a footer tag. And inside this footer tag, I'm going to thank you for visiting my page. And let's just see if that works so far. And I should have thank you for visiting my page, which definitely needs some cleanup. So I'm going to do two things. I'm going to, first of all, look at Bootstrap and utilize that. So in Bootstrap, again, not because I am just randomly selecting things, it's because I've become very comfortable with the documentation, and in the exploration of the documentation, I found that I have a utilities and I have something called colors. So in colors, it looks like I have the ability with Bootstrap to alternate or change the text color and also the background color. And so if I look down at some of the examples here, it looks like this one, for example, text light is creating this solution. So if I created my footer, I don't want a p tag, I'm going to add it directly to the footer. So I'm going to take this class. Let me just do a piece at a time. Let's just do this background dark just so we can see it working. And this is what I would encourage you to do to learn Bootstrap, is just play with it and see what comes out of it. So I'm going to put class equals background dark, and I'm going to refresh my page and look at my footer. Well, my footer is definitely extending the width of the page because it's not contained within this div that has the container. But I can't, and the background's definitely dark, but I can't see my text. So we can change that. Width, looks like if I do text light, I'm going to get a light, or I can also do text white. So we'll just try text light and see what happens. So remember, I can put two classes into a single class quotation marks, just have to separate it by the space. And then now I should be able to at least read that. So that's good. All right. So the next thing I want to again demonstrate, just to reiterate and rehash the same old points, is that I can apply some custom styling to my footer outside of Bootstrap. So I'm going to include, I feel like this is kind of smooshed up. It's uncomfortable, and I want to center the text. So I'm going to create a selector for the footer, and we'll do text align center. It's kind of hard to see here, so let me see if I can do it that way. There we go. And let's just see if that works. So does that center my text? Sure enough, that centers my text. That's awesome. And then I might do some padding just to push that text off of the edges a little bit. That looks a little bit better. And then we already got the color. So I spelled visiting wrong. That's not good. So spell checking is important. You don't want to give your website to your teacher or to your client with misspelling. That's just not good ownership, pride of ownership. Thank you for visiting, still wrong, so you need to stop talking while you're typing. Okay, now let's try. All right, so now we've got a footer that is looking much better. So yay, but I suggested that we're going to create an external style sheet, or external JavaScript page that's going to handle all of that for us. So what we're going to do then is extend this out so we can see. I don't need my style sheet anymore, so I'm going to make that disappear. I'm going to come back into my project pane, and I'm going to create a new page, new file, and this will be called scripts. I don't really have a good name, .js. Now, when you're creating a JavaScript file, it has to be with the .js extension instead of the CSS extension like we did with our style sheet, or HTML like we did for our HTML. I'm going to put these side by side so I can see them together. And I think I'll collapse this pane for real estate. Okay, just like we did in CSS, I cannot put anything on this page that has anything to do with HTML. This is not JavaScript. Because I put the extension .js, it expects everything on this page to be JavaScript, which means that I also don't put a script tag here because this is HTML. This is HTML we use within our HTML to warn the browser that everything inside of here is JavaScript. But because this has a JS extension, the browser knows everything on here should be JavaScript, and so this will generate an error. We don't want a script tag or anything HTML related on this page, just our JavaScript. So what we're going to do then is utilize the skills that we've done already. I'm going to create document.write, and we're going to remember we said that we could actually write our HTML with JavaScript. So I'm going to cut out that code and I'm going to put it here. I'm going to put some spaces for readability. We're going to paste that code in here. Now remember, however, just like we've done before, so all of this is kind of rehashing things we've already talked about. I have double quotation marks inside double quotation marks. So that also is syntactically correct. So incorrect. So anything that I had that was a double quote, I'm going to change to a single quote. Perfect. Okay. So now I need to be able to call or to somehow plot this in my page. And so what I'm going to do then is at the end of my document here where I want my footer to be, and you'll notice that all JavaScript, for reasons we really won't talk about in this particular video, or we'll do that in next semester's 131 class, all of your JavaScript is usually going to go at the bottom of your page. So JavaScript is always above the closing body tag. And just like we did with our CSS, I'm going to link or attach my JavaScript page below any of Bootstrap's JavaScript. So after all of Bootstrap's JavaScript, I'm going to, this time we don't use the word link, which gets a little confusing, but we're going to use that script tag again. And this time instead of href, we're going to put src. I don't know why there's a difference between the two. I'm just teaching it. I don't know the answers. So now inside of src, we're going to put the name of our script tag, scripts.js. And so now what you'll see happen is when the browser renders everything, then it gets to this script tag, it's going to say, I got to go look in this scripts.js file, and that scripts.js file says, oh, this is where you're going to document write. This is where you're going to now put in some JavaScript. So we should see, let's put a different word here. Thank you for visiting my JavaScript. Thank you, just puts thank you. And all I'm doing is just try to see that we actually are making a change and that it's working. And so now let's reload our page, and if we've done it correctly, we should see the new thank you. So now this JavaScript is being rendered from an external JavaScript page, and any script tags that we use, any HTML pages we use, we can just put the script tag at the bottom and it'll write that for us. So if we make a change like we just saw, thank you again, if I had this script on multiple pages, all of those pages then would get the new JavaScript, so I wouldn't have to change the footer on all of my JavaScript pages. An important aside to this is that we've seen script tags up here. Let me just reiterate. So we have a script tag, and in between the open and close script tag, we have some JavaScript. If you create a script tag like we've done before that's linking to an external JavaScript page, you cannot also put in JavaScript here. Like I can't put in, here is another variable. You have to choose one or the other. So either you're going to use a script tag to put in embedded JavaScript, or you're going to use a script tag to call out or to attach to link to an external JavaScript. You can't use both. And even when you are linking to an external JavaScript page, you still need the closing script tag, which you don't need with a link. A link is just a link, right? When you use when you use link up here and you say href equals, there's no closing link. But when you're using JavaScript, and I don't know why I didn't write the language, you have to have this closing JavaScript. All right, so let's take this one step further and finish off with what we've done already. So this will only render at the time wherever this JavaScript is. So if I put the JavaScript in the middle here, for some reason I linked it here, because this is document write, this will write exactly at this point. Let me just prove that. So now I've got a footer that goes across the middle of my page. So that seems kind of inefficient. So, but you told me I have to keep this at the end of the page. I did. So I'm going to put that back at the end of the page and show you a preferable way to do what we've just done here with examples of what we've already done. So let's do this. I'm going to comment this out because that's good. I can keep that there, but I have reference to it, but I don't have to actually, the browser's not going to render it. And so what we're going to do is we're still linking to our external page. I'm going to create a div with a unique ID. My Emmet shortcut is I'm going to do a div with an ID, the footer, and then hit my tab key. So now I have a unique element. This element happens to be a div in this case. So I have a unique element called the footer that I can call from my JavaScript that I can do something with. In other words, we're going to do something we've already done before. Let's see. I'm going to document, get element by ID, which we've done before. Grab that unique ID, which is the footer. Oops, I have to spell it right. And do something we've already done before, which is that inner HTML. Inner HTML equals, so remember we use that to fill in what's in between the opening and closing tag of whatever this element points to. This element, get element by ID, points to a div. And so we want to put something in between the open and closed div. And what we might want to put in is that which we documented right. So let's do this. So now I can put that in here and semicolon. And the spaces were just for readability. I'm just going to erase that. So, and remember that JavaScript can write HTML. So this should in fact do the same thing. It's going to put it into this div. So let's see if we still get the same results. So if I refresh, then you can see that it's down there again. So that is actually a little bit more efficient way of handling things because we don't have to depend on the timing of when our script was put into place. Meaning that, let's say I put, for some reason, and this doesn't make sense, but let's say I put this footer up here. I don't know, it doesn't matter. My point being that now it doesn't matter. The script tag is still at the bottom of the page, which is where it's supposed to be, but because it's not document writing, so it's not writing the data exactly where it found it, it's going to put it into a different place on our page, wherever that happens to be. So now that happens to be, I don't remember where I put it, somewhere up here, right here. And so now it'll plop it into this element. So let's see that happen. And so now we should see it up here. Well, I don't want it up here, I want it down here. So no matter where we have that div, the script tag always stays in the same place. The JavaScript will go find that element wherever it happens to be in our page, and then it'll plop the string that we created, including the HTML and the CSS, all into our wherever that div happens to be. So we've done a lot in this series of videos. We've done a lot with a review of Bootstrap, and we've been introduced to JavaScript, and we've got a lot of different concepts of JavaScript.